are you?
I'm the Doctor.
Time may change me.
It's almost like the entire franchise of Doctor Who is having a major deja vu. After its 2005 comeback, the series is getting another fresh start. What should have been Season 14 is now being rebranded as Season 1 on Disney+. After 3 successful Tennant Tate specials, I will be real that the Church on the Ruby Road Christmas special kinda left me feeling apprehensive. Sure, I love how charming and quirky Ncuti Gat was Doctor Who is, but even the overall vibe was a bit chaotic and rushed. Christmas specials tend to be big and lively, but this one seemed like it could have used some more polishing, mostly because it felt like a rough draft buoyed mainly by everyone's excitement. But based on the first 2 episodes of Season 14, I am happy to say that I might have judged a little too early because the premiere episodes were solid in every aspect. They were economical, well-structured, and very entertaining. Plus, given how long and complex the Doctor Who lore is, Ncuti Gatwa's debut as the 15th Doctor seems to be perfect for newcomers to ease into the timeless basics of the Doctor with 2 hearts, time traveling in a blue police box through space and time with his human companion. So, without wasting another moment, let's discuss the latest adventures of Doctor Who alongside his new friend, Ruby Sunday. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Episode 1 was all about talking space babies and a boogeyman from year 21506. I think the primary focus of Space Babies was to allow the Doctor to explain things to the newcomers by using a pretty straightforward storyline. Anyways, we're gonna pick up right after the Christmas special, with Ruby just stepping onto the TARDIS for the first time. The Doctor tells Ruby about his backstory, how he was abandoned and later adopted by a fancy planet who preferred to use posh designations instead of names. But sadly, tragedy hit his planet and all his people were wiped out in a genocide. He also had to lay down some time travel rules for Ruby, telling her how they could go anywhere and do anything, but without going back to the night of Ruby's birth, so as to prevent anything from altering the past. The Doctor then tries to show off what TARDIS can do and takes Ruby in the dinosaur era, where she accidentally steps on a butterfly and starts turning scaly. This prompts the Doctor to activate a switch that prevents any unintended ripple effects. After coming back to the TARDIS, Doctor Who asked Ruby to pick up any time period into the future. So she picks 5 random numbers that throws them straight into the future, in a far abandoned space station. Most of the first episode unfolds in the year 21506, aboard a closed space station orbiting a human colony planet. Upon landing, Ruby and the Doctor find themselves in the lower level, where they encounter a terrifyingly nasty, spiky-toothed, long-clawed alien-like creature called the Boogeyman. While being chased through slippery and foul-smelling corridors of the ship, the Doctor also feels a dangerous pressure buildup lurking in these depths. Luckily, they make their way to the upper level, which allows Ruby to take a moment to marvel at humanity's achievement of reaching the stars, prompting the Doctor to share his concise reason for always traveling with companions because often the universe looks even more amazing when seen through their eyes. But soon, things get even weirder when they find out that the station is essentially a baby-making farm and is actually being run by space babies. As the Doctor mentions 1,000 times throughout the episode, also, these are not your typical gurgling infants because these babies can talk and seem to be running the show solo while zooming around in their motorized strollers. Apparently, the adult crew left because of a government shutdown caused by a financial downturn. But ironically, it was against the law to shut down the baby-making machine, and as Ruby points out, it's a not-so-subtle hint about how the planet doesn't stop babies from being born, but doesn't care for them once they arrive. Pretty clear messages there, given she was similarly abandoned outside a church. Anyways, all of this information is actually given to them by Jocelyn, the only adult who plays nanny for this army of unsupervised babies. She tells Ruby and Doctor Who that since the station is stuck, there is no chance of them reaching the closest planet that helps refugees. But what's more concerning is that the station is facing an environmental crisis, with supplies and oxygen starting to run out, given that they have been stuck inside side for 6 years. I think Space Babies really ties in with its themes because the crew consists entirely of babies, with just a robotic nanny on the intercom. These babies are lost and trying to figure out who they are, which is a key element that resonates with both Ruby and the Doctor. Ruby was left at a church as a baby and has been searching for her birth family ever since. Meanwhile, the Doctor, who was originally found as the Timeless Child, has now lost the Time Lords who raised him. So when the Doctor tells Captain Poppy that being unique is a superpower and that no one grows up wrong, I believe it's a message we can all take to heart. Anyways, the feel-good moment takes a sudden turn when the babies remember the boogeyman and immediately began crying out of fear. This is when the Doctor manages to coax the nanny intercom, revealing the voice of Jocelyn, who was a former accountant of the ship, but has now turned herself into a makeshift engineer, just hiding in another room, secretly taking care of the babies. Amidst all that chaos, before reaching Jocelyn at the intercom room, the Doctor and Ruby pause to discuss the mystery surrounding Ruby's birth. In a sudden flashback, the Doctor recalls the night at the church, but sees a twist as Ruby's hooded mother turns and points at him. Then, out of nowhere, a vision of a grown-up Ruby appears, only for him to snap out of it and notice that it is now strangely snowing indoors. It was almost like the Doctor stumbled upon a new memory from the day Ruby was born. Unfortunately, we cannot fixate on this mystery because we have got a different baby to worry about. So, circling back to the moment when the Doctor and Ruby met the babies, the infants mistook them for their own parents who had come back for them. While that confusion was resolved by Ruby and the Doctor, both of them took a great fondness for the infants who had never even been picked up or hugged before. And this is when Ruby told a baby named Eric that there was no such thing as a boogeyman. So while the adults were away, Eric bravely decided to confront the big bad doggo downstairs. Naturally, Ruby and the Doctor hurried down to go after Eric and retrieve him, but it's actually the other babies who turn up to save Eric by blasting a flamethrower at the boogeyman. The Doctor then advises Ruby to go back with the babies for her safety, but she just laughs and follows him, refusing to leave him alone in the face of imminent danger. It does not take long for Ruby to notice how their whole situation feels like a children's tale coming to life, complete with a nanny, babies, and a boogeyman. Soon, the duo figures out how, interestingly, the station's malfunctioning educational software decided that, like in a classic bedtime story, the babies needed a scary monster to fear. So it created one that screams at terrifying pitch, and is built with the boogies or boogers collected from the used tissues of the babies through the years. In a way, the boogeyman is like the station's own baby, solely made to keep the crew of machine-made babies in check. Unfortunately, Jocelyn has not picked up on any of this new information, and her loneliness has made her a little cuckoo in the head, mostly from the fear of losing the babies. So from the intercom room, Jocelyn traps the boogeyman in an airlock, hoping to expel it into space. You would think that the babies would be happy at this sight, but no, they're actually crying because their favorite monster is in pain. This is when Doctor Who has an epiphany as he realizes how, just like him, the boogeyman is the only one of its kind and deserves to be saved. So while the Doctor then throws himself into the airlock to close it before the boogeyman is yeeted into outer space, on the upper level, Ruby is trying to remind a distraught Jocelyn to save them all. Once the boogeyman is saved, the Doctor figures out that the smell and the pressure issue of the lower level is actually coming from all the dirty diapers clogging up the vent, thus preventing it from moving. So he makes the constipated space station fart itself right out of the orbit. I'm pretty sure that fart was lethal, given that it's 6 years worth of poo clogging the vents. Apparently, the sheer force of this poo cloud compensated for the station's lack of an engine. I mean, come on, could the Doctor simply not take them in his TARDIS instead of resorting to space pollution? With that being said, it's uncertain what fate awaits the boogeyman and the babies upon landing. But of course, the Doctor isn't staying around to find out. After all, he was just passing through. Now it's time for him to convince Ruby to join him on his TARDIS adventures because he is clearly a lone traveler who would appreciate her company for some aimless fun. And with no job or boss to tie her down, how could a 19-year-old resist? But the Doctor only has one rule for her, that she must never go back to the night of her birth to avoid causing any paradox. However, given Ruby's glimpse into his memories and the mysterious snowfall in the TARDIS as he scans her DNA, it seems like we're not quite done with that night yet. Doctor Who saves music in episode 2. I was surprised how wildly different The Devil's Court was from Space Babies, to a point that they almost feel like two different shows. Doctor Who went from a monster made of baby boogers to a godlike entity from another dimension with the ability to turn music into a powerful weapon of destruction. Teaming up with the Beatles in this episode, the Doctor and Ruby face off against Maestro, a child of the elemental force called the Toymaker. On a side note, in case you missed the 60th anniversary specials, the bi-generated Doctor had banished the Toymaker, but not before the villain had promised that his legions were on their way. Anyways, Maestro was ravishing, gorgeous, and just the perfect villain needed to push Doctor Who's buttons. In this campy episode, we witness Maestro being unleashed into the world through a lost chord found by the musical prodigy Timothy Drake. After crawling out from a piano, Maestro makes all the muscles in their face work, switching between cackles, pouts, snarls, and shouts. Soon, after their antics, Maestro simply gobbles down Timothy's compositions with immense satisfaction, which marks the beginning of their quest to consume all music of the world until only sounds that remain are lame Aeolian tones of nuclear fallout. Of course, the Doctor and Ruby have absolutely zero clue about what's coming their way and decide to take the TARDIS to 1963 so they could watch the Beatles record their first album live in Abbey Road. Well, it does not take a lot of time for the duo to figure out that something is horribly wrong because it feels like a toad had got the band. Even though Paul, John, Ringo, and George are trying to record an album, they seem to be singing extremely weird lyrics that literally sound like an AI-generated verse. To figure out what is really happening and why the world is so hell-bent on dismissing music by calling it useless, the Doctor watches as Ruby plays the piano on the rooftop, causing a few curious onlookers to peer out from their windows to listen. However, when Maestro crawls out of the piano and giggles the same tune that was once used by the Toymaker to manipulate humanity, the Doctor immediately understands who he is being pitted against. The Doctor is evidently overwhelmed and simply grabbed Ruby to run for their lives, which I believe is a sensible reaction considering Maestro's godlike powers. After all, Maestro can manipulate the TARDIS through their sound waves while traversing through space and time independently. So how on earth can the Doctor possibly outwit or overpower a being that embodies the essence of music itself? Well, when it comes to dealing with the gods, the Doctor believes he has only one trick up his sleeve, and he simply cannot split himself in half again like he had done against the Toymaker before. He then uses his sonic screwdriver to temporarily mute the world, so it would allow them to hide from Maestro. However, after a few moments of the villain's silent frustration, they simply derail the Doctor's strategy with a tuning fork and a puddle. With no more ideas, the Doctor evidently feels like throwing in the towel, and witnessing this sort of humanizes him, even if he is an alien. But somehow Ruby does not understand the depth of the situation or just how evil this drag queen of a villain is. So, to emphasize the gravity of the circumstance, the Doctor takes her back to 2024 to show her how the world is in ruins due to the absence of music. The planet has turned bitter because of the lack of good tunes, which eventually led to war and the apparent disappearance of humanity. Next we know, Maestro then appears, elaborately singing about their daddy issues and accidentally mentioning how they were revived through a specific port. And let's just say this was enough hint for the Doctor to understand that with the right combination of notes, the Maestro could be trapped and the end of the world could be reversed. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a stretch for a solution, but I guess you have to do what needs to be done when your opponent is a drag deity of sorts. Sure, the Maestro's immense power escalated the stakes significantly, but it still presented the Doctor with a convenient means to defeat them in one episode. Because let's not forget how history has shown us that even beings like the Toymaker, who could defy the rules of reality, could be bested and sent packing after agreeing to a simple game of catch. Anyways, the duo then used the TARDIS to get back to 1963, where Maestro goes after Ruby since she's the only one left who remembers music. Once the villain caught a grip on her, the only song that could be drawn out was A Christmas Carol from the night she was born, causing an unnatural snowfall yet again. It seems like the mystery of her birth will keep being a slow burn because it somehow seems like this will be the answer to many upcoming mysteries. Anyways, Maestro lets her go after vaguely noting that Ruby's song has the power that is comparable to him, the oldest one. But we are again not given the time to think about who that might be because it's finally showtime as Ruby and the Doctor start playing notes from the piano that the Beatles used for their biggest hits. Weirdly, Maestro's violin breaks down while trying to match their intensity, but they aren't necessarily worried because the Doctor simply does not have the musical skill to find the right chord. Well, emotions drive music, and the doctor has felt it all. As he begins to hit the right notes, Maestro starts to weaken. Sadly, he screws up the 7th note, allowing Maestro to regain their strength and trap Ruby and the doctor in 2 different musical instruments. Lucky for them, in the end, Paul McCartney and John Lennon happened upon the piano and played the correct final note, ultimately freeing the duo from their trapped instruments and banishing Maestro for good. The episode ends with the world order being restored as the revival of music has finally saved the world. Soon we wrap up with a massive musical montage where the doctor simply steals the show. Given how focused they were on the importance of music for humanity's survival, it was only fair they ended it with a proper musical celebration. So that was our new pizzazz-filled doctor and his latest human companions. What is your verdict on the latest version of Doctor Who? Let us know in the comment box below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.